Imagine this. Your class desperately needs one monitor, but three children really, really want the job. How on earth should you decide?
Should someone get it just because they say, "Hey, choose me, I'm the tallest"? Or what if another kid shouts, "No way, choose me, I'm the teacher's absolute favorite"? Maybe a third kid says, "Wait a second, why doesn't the whole class just decide?" Think about it. Which method actually sounds fair to you? Because if we just let the loudest or the tallest win, you know a lot of kids are going to be super unhappy. We definitely need a better, fairer way to figure this out.
Well, what if every single student gets one secret choice? Nobody can force you to pick a specific person. Everyone's choices are collected, kept secret, and then carefully counted. Guess what? That classroom just used the perfect, totally organized solution. It's called an election. An election is literally just an organized process where people choose someone for a position through voting. It is a super structured, fair way to make a big group choice.
Now, an election isn't just some random event where, boom, someone suddenly becomes the leader. No, it's a really careful, step-by-step process. We can break the whole thing down into 5 main stages: nomination, candidates, voting, counting, and finally, the result. Honestly, understanding the sequence makes the whole idea of how we choose our leaders so much easier to grasp. So let's walk through these exact steps together. All right, step 1. Let's say your teacher looks at the class and asks, okay, who would actually like to be the monitor? Let's suggest some names. This right here is called the nomination stage. To nominate basically means to formally suggest or put forward a person's name for a position. It's just how we figure out who actually wants the job before we make any big decisions. So, what do those nominated students actually become? They become candidates. A candidate is a person standing for a position in an election. But hey, remember, just getting a nomination does not mean that person has already won. Think of it kind of like entering a running race, right? Entering the race definitely makes you a runner, but that is completely different from actually winning the whole race. Let's actually apply this to our classroom story. So, Class 4 needs a new monitor. The teacher asks for nominations. Arav, Mira, and Zoya are all nominated, and they agree to be candidates. Here they are. Now, before anyone makes a choice, each of these 3 candidates gets a quick moment to stand up, speak to the class, and explain exactly why they'd be a great monitor and how they'd help everybody out. Once our candidates have said their piece, we move right into the voting stage. Voting is the actual act or process of recording your choice. At this point, every eligible student in the class is officially a voter. They each get one little slip of paper, which is their actual vote. They quietly and totally secretly mark the name of the candidate they like best and drop that slip right into a ballot box. Literally no one else knows who they chose. And that is the act of voting. But hold on, what actually makes this system fair? Ask yourself this: what if one student just grabbed 5 slips of paper and voted 5 times? Or what if one candidate threatened their classmates or just yelled the loudest until everyone else gave up? Would that be fair? Of course not. A genuinely fair election means rules are strictly followed. It means one vote each, secret choices so nobody feels pressured, and absolutely honest counting. It's all about free choice, definitely not force. And actually, speaking of honest counting, that brings us to our next absolutely crucial step. Because let's be real, voting would mean absolutely nothing if nobody actually counted those choices. To count simply means to total up the votes after the voting is entirely finished. In our classroom, the teacher and maybe a couple of student volunteers will open up that box, pull out all the voting slips, and carefully tally them up to find the true winner. Okay, the votes are in and they are counted. Arav got 8 votes, Mira got 12, and Zoya got 5. I'm going to pause for just a second here. Look at the numbers. Can you calculate them and predict who won before I even say it? Yep, you guessed it. Mira receives the highest number of votes, so she is officially declared the brand new class monitor. This right here is the final step, the result. The whole structured process worked perfectly. Instead of arguing about who's the tallest or who's the loudest, or having the teacher just randomly pick someone, the class used a super fair, organized method to totally solve their problem. Okay, now let's zoom way, way out. This classroom example is pretty small, but it actually helps explain a much, much larger idea. In a classroom, maybe 30 students choose one monitor. But in a whole country, millions of citizens choose their leaders. It sounds like a completely different thing just because of the massive size. But actually, the exact same basic rules and steps apply.
And this brings us to a really, really important word: democracy. A democracy is a system where people participate in choosing their representatives, usually through elections. India, for example, is a massive democracy. That fair, rule-based classroom election we just solved, that is exactly how an entire democratic nation operates. It's just doing it on a gigantic scale with millions more voters.
So, why do elections actually matter so much? Well, they matter because they allow voters to express their own free choice. They make it possible for absolutely everyone to participate. They make sure we follow fair rules instead of deciding our leadership through force or shouting or favoritism. And honestly, most importantly, they remind us that choosing a leader is both a really great right and a super serious responsibility. To really wrap your head around the scale of this, wow, did you know? During India's first general elections way back in 1951 and 1952, the country was so incredibly huge, and the voting had to reach millions of people in totally different places, from massive cities all the way to super remote villages, that the election actually took several months to complete. It was this unbelievably huge historical exercise in bringing democratic voting to millions of citizens for the very first time. Just think about that for a second. Going from one simple classroom choice all the way to millions upon millions of voters deciding the future of an entire country, all using the exact same organized process? Amazing, isn't it?